Well, greetings. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. We're continuing our story with Moses. You know what? Up until now, how has time been measured? And I suppose it's still going to be measured in this way, but for a long time it was measured in the terms of Joseph's life. Joseph's gone now. Jacob's gone now. The last one we saw was Levi, was the one who died last. And now they're measuring time in terms of Israel, the amount of time that we've been in the land. But I believe they're going to start changing that to the time of Moses' life. Let's kind of watch for that. Last week, Moses was born. Woohoo! Lots of things going on. You know, we read Exodus 1 through 15, or actually 1 through the end last week, and barely touched the information that we're getting here. Here's what we talked about last week. We had Amram, ben Kohath, ben Levi, ben Israel. How come they didn't say Jacob? You know what? There's a lot of times where Yasher goes back and forth between Jacob and Israel. Is that purposeful? What's going on with that? This says Ben Israel. Does that mean that Amram was a Sabbath keeper, not a Sabbath keeper, a Passover keeper, a time of life keeper? Was he a spiritual man? I tend to think that he was, because it was his daughter, who's getting born right now, who is going to prophesy. We'll see. Last week we saw it. We'll see it again. I'll show it to you. Here it is. He's taking Jochebed, 126 years old, when he came to her. She's the daughter of Levi. Amazing. Levi had 3 sons and a daughter. Who knows? You know, last week I said that she was born when we came to Egypt. And I think I tried to make our time in Egypt a year less. I don't think that works. I've gone back and forth through that. Maybe it's a mind cramp on my part, but it seems like if she was if she was born when we were coming into Egypt, her years and Egypt's years should be the same amount of years, wouldn't they? That's how it seems to me. I've gone back and forth. But our first year in Egypt is her first year of life. So it seems like if it's the 126 years, if she's 126 years old, that we're in our 126th year. But that means that we have to have Miriam born, Aaron born, 3 years that he's put hers away, and then have Moses born in 7 months in the 5th year. Because Moses is born when she's 130 years old. Wow, there's a lot that has to happen to see this and figure this out. So, then we had, they just mentioned it, just a mention, Zepho, king of Rome, king of Kittim, ruled for 50 years. He dies, someone else takes his place. And when that happens, and this may be why it's being mentioned, because Balaam is going to leave Kittim, Rome, and go to Egypt. Remember, he's always looking for the grass that's the greenest, the place where he can have the most influence in the kingdoms of the earth. He's going to go to Pharaoh. Why is that important? We're going to see today, from last week, that he tried to get Moses killed. Do you remember? Let's see. They received him with great honor, it says. Now it says in the 130th year of Israel going down to Egypt, Pharaoh had a dream. Who's going to interpret that dream but Balaam, son of Beor? What does he say? This means nothing but a great evil that will spring up against Egypt in the latter days. For a son will be born to Egypt who will destroy all Egypt and its inhabitants and bring forth the Israelites from Egypt with a mighty hand. He sees it, but now we also have Jochebed is going to see it shortly. Jochebed? No, Miriam. Well, now the king is going to talk to Raul and Job the Uzite from the land of Uzite. Raul's going to give him a very wise decision. Remember, Raul is a Midianite, a son of a descendant, a seed of Abraham. He knows the history of the Hebrews, and he warns the king about all the things that Abraham has done, and Isaac has done, and Jacob has done, and how you can't go against these men and profit. There's going to be a problem. So now he finishes by saying, now therefore, if it seems good in thine eyes, cease from destroying Israel's seed. But if it be not thy will that they shall dwell in Egypt, then send them forth from here. Don't hurt them, that they may go to the land of Canaan, the land where their ancestors sojourned. Well, Pharaoh didn't like it. When Pharaoh heard the words of Jethro, he was angry. So he rose up with shame from the king's presence and went to Midian. This is Jethro, Raul. He was just called Raul just a few verses up before this. Now he's called Jethro. It says he's going to go back to Midian and he's going to take Joseph's stick. Ooh, interesting. We're going to see that stick here maybe today, if not for sure the next day or the next week. Then he talks to Job. What does Job say? Behold, all the inhabitants of the land are in thy power. Let the king do as it seems good in his eyes. What a cop-out. What a false foundation for telling the king, behold, all the inhabitants of the land are in thy power. Are they in his power? You know, there's a lot of kings and rulers of this earth that think all the inhabitants of the land are in their power. But they're not. They're not. Next, he says, and the king said to Balaam, what dost thou say? Well, Balaam goes through this long discourse. You can't burn them. You can't work them to death. And then he says, throw them into the water. So this was his great idea. Drowned all the children of Israel. Or the children of Israel. The male child, what do they call them? The Yeladim. The children, the male children of Israel. We're going to drown them. Here now we're having a switch. It says, at that time, the spirit of Elohim was upon Miriam, the daughter of Amram, the sister of Aaron, and she went forth and prophesied in the house. This is kind of like going back in time because we were talking about the 130th year. Now we're going back in time because Moses is going to be born at this time. Or maybe it's still the 130th year and it makes sense. He's a seven-month baby, premature baby, remember? He could be born in the same year, I suppose. Or maybe it's not a back in time. But listen what she says. Behold, a son will be born to us from my father and mother this time, and he will save Israel from the hands of Egypt. Based on that, Amram took back his woman, Jochebed, because he had driven her away 3 years before because he didn't want to have his children drowned. Now he brings her back and they conceive. And here it is, Moses being born. And at the end of 7 months from her conception, she brought forth a son. Moses was prematurely born. The whole house was filled with a great light, as of the light of the sun and the moon at the time of their shining. Interesting. When Moses, the Savior of Israel, was born, there was a great light. I wonder if there's going to be a great light when the nation born in a day is going to happen. Or is that light going to be at Shavuot, the following Shavuot, when pillars of fire and smoke appear? Oh, man, I want to know. I want to see. You know, we get these ideas, but we have to wait and see how they pan out. When we see it, we'll say, that's it. That's it. It's a little different, but that's what we've been waiting for. We'll recognize it. It says, and when the woman saw the child, that it was good and pleasing to the sight, she hid it for 3 months. But here it is. The Egyptian women went to Goshen, where Israel's babies were. They carried their young ones. This is what we were talking about. Well, she got found out. And it was at that time, about 3 months, from Jochebed's concealment of her son, that the thing was known to Pharaoh's house. Oh no! We got to do something. This is what prompted her to put Moses in the ark to save his life. So she does. Now, Miriam follows the ark. She wants to see what becomes of her words. Miriam must be like 5 years old. She's not very old. She has to be 5 years old, less than 5 years old, perhaps. But she's following the ark. She's taking it upon herself to talk to Pharaoh's daughter. Look what happens. Bathia, the daughter of Pharaoh, is going to find this baby, Moses, raise him up out of the water, and take him as her own. It says the women that were in Egypt walking by the riverside desired to give him suck, but he wouldn't suck. For this thing was of Jehovah, in order to restore him to his mother's breast. Well, he did. Look at this. Pharaoh's daughter said to Jochebed, take this child away and suckle it for me. I will pay thee wages, 2 bits of silver daily. I'll bet you that was a big amount of money in those days. And the woman took the child and nursed it. Remember, the house of Levi isn't working for Pharaoh. They're finding other ways of taking care of their family. This is going to be one of the ways that the family's going to be taken care of. You know what? I was thinking about Bathia, the foster mother of Moses. Her father is Melal. Remember Melal? That's her dad. She's the firstborn daughter of him. This is the same man that is going to raise Moses. Oh my goodness, this is the same man that's going to try to exterminate Israel and Israel's children. Well, let's keep reading. We had a bunch of people, then the names. Oh, here, I put the note on this. Bathia is Pharaoh's, Melal's, the king's daughter. And his sons are the boys that Moses is going to grow up with. And among them is the son that Moses will tell, let Israel go. Did you hear that? We're going to see that one of these sons, he already knows Moses. He was raised with Moses. Or perhaps he wasn't quite as old. Maybe it came along later. But I would tend to think that Moses would know him. Most believe that Moses was in Egypt until he was 40 years old. We're going to see he left Egypt when he was 18 years old. Let me finish my note. That is the same advice, let Israel go, that Malal received from Jethro, Raul, the Midianite, 80-some years before. Let him go. We just saw it. 125th year. Let him go. Didn't let him go. It's going to end up becoming the destruction, a decision that's going to bring destruction on Egypt. Then we turned to the king of Edom. We had a new king, Saul. Went back to Pharaoh. Why did they introduce Saul? Look at that, they're going back to Pharaoh. Within it says, and when Pharaoh, king of Egypt, saw the counsel which Balaam had advised respecting Israel's seed did not succeed, but that they were still fruitful, multiplied, and increased throughout the land of Egypt, he came to another decision. He's going to do something worse. Now he's going to say, the man who shall be found deficient in his labor. Remember, this is not Levi's sons, because they're not working for Pharaoh. This is all the other tribes' sons. And the man who shall be found deficient in his labor, which he performs daily, whether in mortar or brick, then his youngest son, not oldest son, youngest son shall be put in their place. It says, but the tribe of Levi did not at that time work for the Israelites. Well, now we're going to see Moses. This is the 133rd year, the third year of Moses' birth, our 133rd year in Egypt. And look at, they're talking about the years of Moses' birth now. Pharaoh was sitting at a banquet with El-Paraneth. The queen was sitting on his right and Bathia on his left. Moses was lying on her bosom. And Balaam, the son of Beor, and his two sons. Look at that. Balaam has two sons now. 80 years from now, it's going to be Balaam and those two sons who are going to be the magicians that he's going to have disputes with. Remember, he turns the rod into a stick. They turn the rod into a snake. Right after Moses turned the rod into a snake. It's these guys. Balaam and his two sons. It's so interesting to see who these guys are and how Balaam has been an adversary to Moses his entire life. How much of an adversary is he? Let's find out. Look at what happens in this very situation. And the lad stretched forth his hand upon the king's head, took the crown off the king's head, and placed it on his own head. Oh no, everybody's at the table watching. What are we going to do? Look at what Balaam says. And Balaam, the son of Beor, the magician, answered before the king and the princes and said, remember now, O my lord and king, the dream which thou didst have many days since. This is the kid, he's saying. For this is the manner of all the Hebrews, to deceive kings and their nobles, to do these things cunningly in order to make the kings of the earth and their men tremble. Abraham did it, he said. He did it to the king of Egypt with regard to Sarai. He did it to Avimelech. Isaac did it to Avimelech. He points out all the places where they've done this. He says that Joseph, his brother, sold him into slavery. He came down and he became the king of Egypt. It's happening again. Well, he wants to warn him. And Balaam said to the king, let us moreover call for the judges of Egypt, the wise men thereof, and let them know if the judgment of death is due this boy, as thou didst say, and then we will slay him. Hear that? He's going to slay him. He's already made a decision to slay him. So they are going to bring the judges. But who comes with the judges? Look at this. An angel, a melech, a messenger, who seemed like a wise man of the Pharaoh. answered and said as follows before all the wise men of Egypt. Here he is. He says, if it please the king, send for men who will bring an onyx stone and a coal. Remember that? We talked about that last week. The boy was going to reach out for the onyx stone, but the angel made Moses grab the hot coal instead and put it to his mouth and burned his mouth. I think that this is where we saw in Exodus 4, it says, then Moses said to Jehovah, "Oh, my master, I am not elegant, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." Could that be why he is slow of speech and slow of tongue? Because he burned his mouth when he was 3 years old? I got a hunch it might be. It says, well, the boy was in the king's house. He was robed in purple, and he grew up among the king's seed. Grew up among the king's seed. He grew up among the very man. Wait till you see what that man is like, his sons. Dwarfed sons. You know what? Now that I think about it, Moses did not grow up among this man. This son had to be born much, much later, because he was only 20 years old when he took the throne from his father, who had been sick for 10 years. So no, Moses did not grow up among this man, but he grew up with Bathia. Bathia is going to be there when the firstborn of this dwarf son, the king's Milal's son, is born and dies at Passover. This is the woman who's going to come to talk to Moses. Isn't that interesting? Well, and they told him all the counsels of Balaam. Oh, look at this. And he daily went forth and came to the land of Goshen. This is Moses. He daily came forth and went to the land of Goshen, where his brethren, Israel's seed, were. And Moses saw them daily in shortness of breath and labor. They're the ones that are going to tell him what happened and why they are in such distress. They're talking to him about Balaam. They said this, and they told him all the counsels which Balaam, Beor's son, had done and counseled against them, and what he had also counseled against him in order to slay him. This is talking about Moses. Remember, Balaam wanted to see Moses killed when he was 3 years old, when he had taken the king's crown off his head. And when Moses heard these things, his anger was kindled against Balaam, and he sought to kill him. Now, Balaam's going to leave town. He's been in Egypt not that long, but he can't have been in Egypt for more than about 20 years. So he's leaving. He's going to go to Kikian as king of Cush. Same place Moses is going to go. We're going to see that today. And Moses said to Pharaoh, I pray thee, my Lord, I have come to seek a small request of thee. Look what the request is. Let there be given unto thy servants, Israel's seed who are in Goshen, one day of rest therein from their labor. Did Moses understand that Jehovah's instructions already were? Remember, Jehovah doesn't change. His word endures forever. Has there always been a Sabbath? Did Jacob keep the Sabbath? Did Noah keep a Sabbath? I think they did. I think that Moses is turning, or really bringing us back into a Sabbath rest. Let there be given unto thy servants, Israel's seed, who are in Goshen, one day of rest therein from their labors. Look what the proclamation was. To you, all Israel's seed, thus says the king, for 6 days you shall do your work and labor, but the 7th day you shall rest and shall not perform any work. Thus you shall do all the days as the king and Moses Bathia's son commanded. Oh, how interesting. Moses got them back the Sabbath. But now we are going to continue. This is where we're going to begin today. We finished Exodus 2, 11 through 15. Let's briefly look at that. 11 through 15. Yeah, it's so sketchy. Let me just read it briefly. It's just a short section. Now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brother and looked at their burdens. This is what we were just talking about. And he saw Egyptians beating a Hebrew. Well, actually, no, this is not what we're talking about. This is the transition. How old was Moses when this happened? I always thought he was 40 years old when this happened. We're going to see that's not the case. And we don't know what happened. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that way. And when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Does that sound like a good guy? Does Moses sound like a good guy? What's going on? Why did he kill him? We don't know. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. And he said to the one who did wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" Then the guy says, "This is a complete stranger, not even related, it sounds like." Then he said, "Who made you prince and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So Moses feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." When Pharaoh heard this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Wow! Talk about an outline. Fled from the face of Pharaoh, dwelt in the land of Midian, and sat down by a well. Do you know how much time is going to pass between 15 and the end of 15? About 47 years. We're going to see that today. Let's go to our story. And when Moses was 18 years old, there it is, time's being measured in terms of Moses' life. He desired to see his father and mother, and he went to them to Goshen. And when Moses was come near Goshen, he came to the place where Israel's seed were engaged in work. And he observed their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian smiting one of the Hebrew brethren. When the man who was beaten saw Moses, he ran to him for help. For the man, Moses, was greatly respected in Pharaoh's house. And he said to him, "Adonai, attend to me. This Egyptian came to my house." Listen, this is what happened. This Egyptian came to my house in the night, bound me, and came to my woman in my presence. And now he seeks to take my life away. He's trying to kill him. How many ways is there for this man to be judged? Let's take a look. Now I know why I deleted one of these. I should have kept it. Here's the first one. If a man is found kidnapping any of his brethren, tying him up, would that be considered kidnapping? Any of his brethren of Israel's seed, and mistreats him or sells him, mistreats him. Would you say having sex with his wife in front of him would be mistreating him? Or sells him? Then the kidnapper shall die, and you shall put away the evil from among you. If a man is found lying with another man's woman, then both of them shall die, the man who lay with the woman and the woman. So you shall put away the evil from Israel. The man who commits adultery with another man's woman, he who has committed the adultery with his neighbor's woman, the adulterer and the adulteress, shall surely be put to death. Well, this wasn't something that the woman was into. She was taken by force. This was a rape. I had another one in here. I should have left it in here, that a man who kills another man shall surely be put to death. Well, he didn't kill him yet. Moses caught him before he killed him and took care of him. And Moses heard this wicked thing. His anger was kindled against the Egyptian. You know what? Moses knew Yahovah's ways. He was taught, probably by his father. And he turned this way and the other. And when he saw there was no man there, he smote the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And he delivered the Hebrew from the hand of him that smote him. Well, this is what we were just reading. The outline from Exodus. And the Hebrew went to his house. This is the Hebrew, the one who had his wife taken. Look what's happening. And Moses returned to his home, and he went forth and came back to the king's house. And when the man had returned home, he thought to repudiate, put away. Here, I got a note here. Casting off, rejecting, divorcing his wife, his woman. For it was not right in Jacob's house for any man to come to his woman after she had been defiled. Well, what a drag. You know, this has been going on for years. In the West, not 150 years ago, if Indians had taken a man's woman and defiled her, many times they wouldn't take their woman back because she had already been with another man. Today, we don't even think twice about it, do we? Here's what Yehovah says about it. When a man takes a woman and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanliness in her, he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house. When she has departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's woman, if the latter husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of the house, or if the latter husband dies who took her as his woman, then her former husband who divorced her must not take her back to be his woman after she has been defiled, temeh, for that is an abomination before Yahovah, and you shall not bring sin on the land which Yahovah, your Elohim, is giving you as an inheritance. Well, we don't have the land yet, but taking your wife back after she's been defiled doesn't sound like something that's supposed to happen. And the woman went and told her brothers, "Oh, look what he's doing to me!" And when the woman's brothers sought to slay him. So now he's got another guy more men trying to slay him. And he fled from the house and escaped. He's just trying to do what's right. And on the second day, Moses went forth to his brethren and saw, and behold, two men were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, "Why dost thou smite thy brother?" Okay, that's what it said in Torah. And he answered him and said to him, "Who has set thee as prince and judge over us?" Almost word for word. "Dost thou think to slay me as thou didst slay the Egyptian?" And Moses was afraid, and he said, "Surely this thing is known." Well, it was known. Pharaoh found out about it. And Pharaoh heard of this affair. And he ordered Moses to be slain. Look at this. So Elohim sent Amalek, a messenger, and he appeared unto Pharaoh in the likeness of the captain of the guard. And the angel, the Melech, the messenger of Yahovah, took a sword from the hand of the captain of the guard and took off his head with it. For the likeness of the captain of the guard was turned into the likeness of Moses. They killed this man thinking that they had killed Moses. Well, that's not the story we've heard, is it? No, the story we've heard was Moses was escorted to the border and sent away. At least that's what happened in the Exodus, wasn't it? They all thought Moses was dead. This captain of the guard looks like Moses. And when they saw him dead, they assumed Moses was dead. Oh, this is interesting. I'm going to read this. This is something that was given to me long ago. And I believe this is talking about the 144,000, the servants of Jehovah in the last days. And now, thus says Jehovah, who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. For I am Jehovah, your Elohim, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I gave Egypt for your ransom, Ethiopia and Seba in your place. Since you are precious in my sight, you have been honored, and I have loved you. Therefore, I will give men for you and people for your life. Was this captain of the guard one of those that was given in place of Moses, the Savior of Israel? I wonder. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your seed from the east, gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar, my daughters from the ends of the earth. Everyone who is called by my name, whom I have created for my glory. I have formed him. Yes, I have made him. He's going to use these men to bring other men and women to him in the last days. Just as he used Moses to bring all Israel and those from Egypt who would join Moses in the last days and become part of Israel, become the Ger who dwells with them when they left Egypt. Well, look what happens. And the angel, the messenger of Jehovah, took hold of the right hand of Moses and brought him forth from Egypt and placed him from without the borders of Egypt, a distance of 40 days' journey. It didn't say he put him in the land of Midian, did it? It just says a distance of 40 days' journey. Moses left when he was 18 years old. Sounds like Moses was transported. Beam me up, Scotty. Isn't that what it sounds like? Placed him from without the borders of Egypt, a distance of 40 days' journey. Wow, I'd like to do that. And Aaron, his brother, alone remained in Egypt's land. And he prophesied to Israel's seed, saying, what did he say? Thus says Jehovah, Elohim of your ancestors, throw away each man, the abominations of his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. And Israel's seed rebelled and would not hearken to Aaron at that time. Aaron knows righteousness. These are good men coming from Kohath's seed. And Jehovah thought to destroy them, were it not that Jehovah remembered the covenant which he had made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In those days, Pharaoh's hand continued to be severe against Israel's seed, and he crushed and oppressed them until the time when Elohim sent forth his word and took notice of them. Well, look at this. What did Moses do for almost 47 years of his life? We're talking a lot of years. And still we're not talking about 10 years of prison. We've got a lot to see. It was in those days that there was a great war between Cush's seed and the east seed and Amram. And they rebelled against Cush's king, in whose hands they were. Who are we talking about? Cush's seed. Who's Cush? Remember, Cush comes from Ham. Here, let me open this up. We're talking about Cush, the east seed, and Amram. Who are these people? Let's know who these people are, who these seed are. It says the seed of Ham were Cush, firstborn of Cush. Or Cush is the firstborn of Ham. Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Okay, he's a Hamite. The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Zavda, Ra'amah, and Savtakah. And the sons of Ramah were Sheba and Dana. Then it says, Cush begat Nimrod. Remember, he begat Nimrod in his old age. And he began to be a mighty one on the earth, a defiled mighty one on the earth, we saw earlier. Now, here's Abraham taking Keturah. She's going to give him 6 sons, Zimran, Yoktan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, Shua. These are the sons of Keturah. Okay, look at these are the east seed. Look at how this thing finishes. And while he was still living, he sent them eastward away from Isaac his son to the country of the east. The east seed are all Abraham's seed. These are including Midian, potentially. They rebelled against and Amram. Who's Amram? Amram is a son of Shem. Shem's seed were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Amram. The sons of Amram were Uz, the Uzite, Job that we were talking about. Seems to be a seed of Amram, a seed of Shem. These are the actors. It says, and they rebelled against the king of Cush, whose hands they were in. And Kikianus, king of Cush, went forth with all Cush's seed. The men of Cush, the mighty men of Cush, a people numerous as the sand. And he went to fight against Aram and the east seed to bring them under subjection. And when Kikianus went out, look what it says. He left Balaam, the magician, with his 2 sons to guard the city, and the lowest sort of the people of the land. And Kikianus went forth to Aram and the east seed, and he fought against them and smote them, and they all fell down wounded before Kikianus and his people. And he took many of them captive, and he brought them under subjection as at first, and he encamped upon their land to take tribute from them as usual. But while he's gone, look what happens. And Balaam, son of Beor, when the king of Cush had left him to guard the city and the poor of the city, he rose up and advised the land's people to rebel against King Kikianus, not to let him enter the city when he should come home. And the land's people hearkened to him. Yeah, they hearkened to Balaam, and they swore to him and made him king over them, and his 2 sons, the captains of the army. Balaam's not a good guy. So they rose up and raised the walls of the city at the 2 corners, and they built an exceedingly strong building. And at the 3rd corner they dug ditches without number between the city and the river, which surrounded the whole land of Cush. And they made the waters of the river burst forth. And the 4th corner they collected numerous serpents by their incantations and enchantments. Remember, these are Balaam and his sons. And they fortified the city and built therein, and no one went out or in before them. And Kikianus fought against Aram and the east seed, and he subdued them as before, and they gave him their usual tributes. And he went and returned to his land. We got to be asking ourselves, so what does this have to do with anything? And when Kikianus, king of Cush, approached his city, and all the captains of the forces with him, he lifted up their eyes and saw that the walls of the city were built up and greatly elevated, so that the men were astonished at this. And they said to one another, it is because they saw that we were delayed in battle and were greatly afraid of us, or greatly afraid probably for us. Therefore we have done this thing and raised the city walls and fortified them, so that the king's Canaan's kings might not come in battle against them. Canaan's kings. Cush. Canaan was his brother. So the king and the troops approached the city door, and they looked up, and behold, all the gates of the city were closed. And they called out to the sentinels, saying, "Open unto us, that we may enter the city." And the sentinels refused to open to them by order of Balaam the magician, their king. They suffered them not to enter the city. And they raised a battle with them opposite the city gate. And 130 men of the army of Kikianus fell on that day. We're talking about men. There are no ladies out here. And on the next day, they continued to fight, and they fought on the side of the river. They endeavored to pass, but were not able. Some of them sank in pits and died. So the king ordered them to cut down trees to make rafts, upon which they might pass to them. And they did so. And when they came to the place of the ditches, the waters revolved by mills, and 200 men upon 10 rafts were drowned. And on the third day they came to fight at the side where the serpents were, but they could not approach there, for the serpents slew them 170 men. And they ceased fighting against Cush, and they besieged Cush for 9 years. No person came in or out. Besiege means we're going to protect the city, defend the city. Well, it's besieging the city and preventing them from getting provisions. If you can't get provisions into your city, you're going to have problems, aren't you? Well, that's what they did. How long did they do it? They besieged for 9 years. No person came out or in. And at that time that the war and the siege were against Cush, Moses fled from Egypt, from Pharaoh, who sought to kill him for having slain the Egyptian. Moses was 18 years old when he fled from Egypt and from the presence of Pharaoh, and he fled and escaped to the camp of Kikianus, which at that time was besieging Cush. Okay, this is right after they had those several days of battles. This is when Moses is going to come on the scene. It says they were going to besiege the camp for 9 years. Look what it says. And Moses was 9 years in the camp of Kikianus, king of Cush, all the time that they were besieging Cush. And Moses went out and came in with them. He was involved in the Cush, and they got to know him for 9 years. And the king and the princes and all the fighting men loved Moses, for he was great and worthy. His stature was like a noble lion. His face was like the sun, and the strength was like that of a lion. And he was a counselor to the king. Does he sound like one of Israel's seed? Strong like a lion, strength like a lion. And at the end of 9 years, Kikianus was seized with a mortal disease, and his illness prevailed over him, and he died on the 7th day. So his servants embalmed him and carried him and buried him opposite the city gate at the north end of the land of Egypt. And they built over him an elegant, strong, and high building, and they placed great stones below. And the king's scribe engraved upon those stones all the might of their king Kikianus, and all his battles which he fought. Behold, they are written there at this day. Now after the death of Kikianus, king of Cush, it grieved his men and troops greatly on account of the war. So they said to one another, "Give us counsel that what we are to do at this time, as we have resided in the wilderness 9 years away from our homes. Their children are growing up without them. Their wives do not have them to take care of them. If we say we will fight against the city, many of us will fall wounded or killed. And if we remain here in the siege, we will also die. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Between a rock and a hard place, aren't they? For now all the kings of Aram and the east seed will hear that our king is dead, and they will attack us suddenly in a hostile manner, and they will fight against us and leave us no remnant of us. Now therefore let us go and make a king over us, and let us remain in the siege until the city is delivered up to us. And they wished to choose on that day a man for king from the army of Kikianus. And they found no object of their choice like Moses to reign over them. They're going to choose Moses. And they hastened, stripped off each man his garment, and cast them to the ground. And they made a great heap, and placed Moses thereon. Great heap. What kind of heap did they make? Their garments heap. And they rose up, and blew with trumpets, and called out before him, and said, May the king live! May the king live! And all the people and nobles swore unto him to give him for a woman Adoniah, the queen, the Cushite woman of Kikianus. And they made Moses king over them in that day. Oftentimes that's what the kings did, was they took the women of the former king. Remember, that's what one of David's sons did. Took his women and his concubines when he proclaimed himself to be king. And all the people of Cush issued a proclamation on that day, saying, Every man must give something to Moses of what is in his possession. And they spread a sheet upon the heap, and every man cast into it something of what he had. One a gold earring, another a coin. Also an onyx stones, bdellium, pearls, and marble did Cush's seed cast unto Moses upon the heap. Also silver and gold in great abundance. Remember, this is what we've seen over and over again. We're going to see it still at least another time. When a king takes over, the men give their possessions, at least some of their possessions, to the king. It appears to me that laying their robes was a form of swearing fealty to Moses by casting their garments in front of him, making that great heap. And Moses took all the silver and gold, all the vessels, and the bdellium and the onyx stones, which all Cush's seed had given to him, and he placed them amongst his treasures. And Moses reigned over Cush's seed on that day in place of Kikianus, king of Cush. Now we're going to go back to Pharaoh. And in the 50th year of the reign of Pharaoh, this is the 50th year. Remember, Melal is going to reign 94 years. This is the 50th year of the king of Egypt. That is in the 150th year of the Israel, 157th year of Israelites going down to Egypt, reigned Moses in Cush. And Moses was 27 years old when he began to reign over Cush. And 40 years did he reign. Remember, he came out when he was 18. 9 years would make him 27. Became king at 27. Reigns now for 40 years. It's going to make him 66, 67 when he's done reigning. This is where Moses has spent his life. And Jehovah granted Moses favor and grace in the eyes of Cush's seed. And Cush's seed loved him exceedingly. So Moses was favored by Jehovah and by men. Look at that. They loved him exceedingly. And in the 7th day of his reign, all Cush's seed assembled and came before Moses and bowed down to him to the ground. Remember, they're still besieging the city. And all the children spoke together in the presence of the king. All the men, all the sons. What would it be? It wouldn't be Toph. It would have to be sons, I suppose. Spoke together in the presence of the king, saying, Give us counsel that we may see what is to be done to the city. And it is now 9 years that we have been besieging round about this city, and have not seen our children or our women. And the king answered them, saying, If you will hearken to my voice in all that I command you, then will Yahovah give the city into our hands, and we shall subdue it. For if we fight with them as in the former battle, which we had with them before the death of Kikianus, many of us will fall down wounded as before. Now therefore, behold, here is the counsel for you in this matter. If you will hearken to my voice, then will the city be delivered into our hands. Sounds like Yahovah is giving Moses good wisdom. And all the forces answered the king, saying, All that our king shall command that we will do. Good attitude. And Moses said unto them, Pass through and proclaim a voice in the whole camp unto all the people, saying, Thus says the king, Go into the forest and bring with you a young one of the stork, each man a young one in his hand. And any person transgressing the word of the king, who shall not bring his young one, shall die, and the king will take all belonging to him. And when you shall bring them, they shall be in your keeping. You shall rear them until they are grown. So they're taking a young stork. I always think of the blue herons. We used to have blue herons. I think they're related to a stork. But we used to have herons that were, they lived in the swamps. But they lived way, way, way high in the trees. The tallest trees, they would be, you could see the nests up there. I remember one area in particular that was just loaded with these birds in their nests. Listen what it says. And when you shall bring them, they shall be in your keeping. You shall rear them until they are grown, and you shall teach them to dart upon as is the way of the young ones of the hawk. So all Cush's seed heard the words of Moses, and they rose up and caused a proclamation to be issued throughout the camp, saying, And unto you, all Cush's seed, the king's order is that you go all together to the forest, and catch there a young stork, each man his young one in his hand, and you shall bring him home, and any person violating the order of the king shall die, and the king will take all that belongs to him. And all the people did so, and they went out to the woods, and they climbed the fir trees, and caught each man a young one in his hand, all the young of the storks, and they brought them into the desert to rear them by order of the king. Then they taught them to dart upon similar to the young hawks. And after the young storks were reared, the king ordered them to be hungered for 3 days. And all the people did so. The people, who are we talking about? We're talking about men people. And on the 3rd day, the king said to them, Strengthen yourselves and become valiant men, and put each man his armor and gird his sword upon him, and ride each man his horse, and take each his young stork in his hand. And we will rise up and fight against the city at the place where the serpents are. And all the people did as the king had ordered. And they took each man his young one in his hand. And they went away, and when they came to the place of the serpents, the king said to them, Send forth each man his young stork upon the serpents. And they sent forth each man his young stork as the king ordered. And the young storks ran upon the serpents, and they devoured them all, and destroyed them out of that place. And when the king and the people had seen that all the serpents were destroyed in the place, all the people set up a great shout. And they approached and fought against the city, and took it and subdued it. And they entered the city. And there died on that day 1,100 men of the people of the city's people, and all the inhabitants of the city. But of the people besieging, not one died. Moses' men, Moses didn't lose one man. Yippee. I love seeing that. So, Cush's seed went each man to his house, to his woman and children, and all belonging to him. Now look at Balaam. And Balaam, the magician, when he saw that the city was taken, he opened the gates. He and his 2 sons and 8 brothers fled and returned to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Look what it says. They are the sorcerers and the magicians who are mentioned in the book of the law, standing against Moses when Jehovah brought the plagues upon Egypt. Isn't that interesting? But Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers to the magicians, so the magicians of Egypt, they did also in like manner with their incantations. These are the men that we're talking about. So Moses took the city by his wisdom, and Cush's seed placed him on the throne instead of Kikianus, the king of Cush. And they placed a royal crown upon his head, and they gave him a woman, Adoniah, the Cushite queen, woman of Kikianus. But look what it says. And Moses feared Jehovah, Elohim of his fathers, so that he came not to her, nor did he turn his eyes to her. Wasn't going to take a woman of the line of Ham. And Moses remembered how Abraham had made his servant Eliezer swear, saying unto him, Thou shalt not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan for my son Isaac. It wasn't about the sons of Canaan, it was about the women of Ham. They're supposed to be our servants, and we're not supposed to take them. They're going to lead us in ways that we should not go. Also, what Isaac did when Jacob had fled from his brother, when he commanded him, saying, Thou shalt not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan, nor make alliance with any of Ham's seed. When we take a woman from Ham's seed, we're making alliance with people that we're not supposed to be making alliance with. For Jehovah, our Elohim, gave Ham, ben Noah, and his sons and all his seed as slaves to Shem's seed and to Jacob's seed, and unto their seed after them for slaves forever. Therefore Moses turned not his heart nor his eyes to Kikianus' woman all the days that he reigned over Cush. And Moses feared Jehovah his Elohim all his life. This is what Moses has always done. He's 27 years old right now, but for the next 40 years, he's still going to fear Jehovah. And Moses walked before Jehovah in truth with all his heart and soul, and he turned not from the right way all the days of his life. How did he know the right way? How did he know the internal and unchanging ways of Jehovah? He had to learn them from his dad. He had to learn them from the people of Israel when he went to visit them. Remember, it said daily, in which Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had walked. And Moses strengthened himself in the kingdom of Cush's seed. And he guided Cush's seed with his usual wisdom, and Moses prospered in that kingdom. And at that time, Amram, the east seed, heard that Kikianus, king of Cush, had died. So Amram and the east seed rebelled against Cush in those days. And Moses gathered all Cush's seed, a people very mighty, about 30,000 men. And he went forth to fight with Amram and the east seed. And they went at first to the east seed. And when the east seed heard their report, they went to meet them and engaged in the battle with them. And the war was severe against the east seed, so that Jehovah gave all the east seed into the hands of Moses. And about 300 men fell down slain. And all the east seed turned back and retreated. So Moses and Cush's seed followed them and subdued them and put a tax upon them, as was their custom. This is exactly what Kikianus had done 9 years before. So Moses and all the people with him passed from there to the land of Aram for battle. Land of Aram. Remember, Aram. Remember where Aram is at? It's way up north. Way up north. East of Babylon. I'd open up my map, but it's going to take too long. So Moses and all the people that were with him passed from there to the land of Aram for battle. And the people of Aram also went out to meet them. That's why I say, I think this Cush is the one that's up north, not the one that's below Egypt. Fought against them. I wonder if it's on that map. I doubt it is. No. Here's Cush. We're talking about the people of the east. They're going to be up here, and Aram's even going to be higher up. Our map just doesn't go that high. And Aram also were subdued. That's funny. They say Aram and the Arameans. That's what an Aram is. An Aramean is a seed of Aram. And Aram also were subdued by Moses and Cush's people. They call them Cush's people instead of Cush's seed. And also gave their usual tax. And Moses brought Amram and the east seed under subjection to Cush's seed. And Moses and all the people who were with him turned to the land of Cush, or turned to Cush's land. And Moses strengthened himself in the kingdom of Cush's seed, and Jehovah was with him, and all Cush's seed were afraid of him. Isn't it funny that they say afraid of him? Cush's seed were afraid of. Why was Cush's seed afraid of Moses? Just a few verses up, it said they loved him exceedingly. Now it says they're afraid of him. Carissa says reverence. Maybe they reverenced him. They did. They understood this is a powerful man. Well, now we're going to hear about Edom again. I'm going to skip most of this chapter. I just want to read this small portion. In the years died Saul, king of Edom, and Baal-Hanan ben Akbar reigned in his place. Here's a Baal-Hanan. He's a man. He's not an idol. He's a man. Many times Baals are men. In the 16th year of the reign of Moses over Cush, Baal-Hanan ben Akbar reigned in the land of Edom over all Edom's seed for 38 years. And Moab rebelled against the power of Edom, having been under Edom since the days of Ben-Hadad, Ben-Bedad, who smote them and Midian and brought Moab under subjection to Midian. Boy, they've been paying tribute for a long time. Well, it says skip to 75. Okay, so this is 75. At that time, in the 180th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, there went forth from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot, from Israel's seed, who were all of the tribe of Joseph. Joseph's tribe, Ephraim, ben Joseph's seed. Again, we're measuring time in terms of Israelites in Egypt right now. Moses isn't with them, is he? But look at this. This is, I guess I got a couple notes here I want to read to you. First of all, let's take a look at this. We're talking about the 180th year. We're going to be in Egypt for 210 years. Remember, it says in Exodus, well, here, I guess I've got it here. Let me just read this. It looks like they're going in their own strength. This was indeed 400 years, according to what Jehovah told Abraham, but they started it at the wrong time, 30 years too early. They thought the time has come for Israel to be delivered from Egypt. They knew the promise, but they started it from the wrong place. This is the 180th year. Here's the 180th year. Everybody says, well, we were in Egypt 430 years, don't you know? No, we were not in Egypt for 430 years. Abraham was in Egypt. We're in Egypt. Jacob was in Egypt. were all in Egypt. Isaac was in Egypt. We don't understand what's going on. Here's the prophecy, comes from Genesis 15, 13 through 14. It says, and he said to Abraham, Jehovah said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterwards they shall come out with great possessions. This is what these men are trying to do. But what does it say? It says, certainly, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in the land. He doesn't have a descendant yet. So this count doesn't begin until he has a descendant. From the time that Isaac is born to the time they leave is going to be exactly 400 years to the day, because Isaac is born on the Moed. What did he say? At this time, a year from now, on the Moed, your son will be born. This is what we're talking about. But they're starting it from a different time. What time are they starting it from? They're starting it from the time that it was actually given to the promise. They're starting it at the time that the promise was given to Abraham that he and his seed would inherit the land. Here's where we get the 430 years. Now the sojourn of Israel's seed who lived in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, on that very same day, it came to pass that the armies of Jehovah went out from the land of Egypt. What day is this? This is the day after the Passover, the first day of unleavened bread. What does that mean? It means Jehovah does not change and his word endures forever. And it's possible that Abram was keeping the time of life, or at least acknowledging this day 430 years prior. Ooh, this is amazing. Now, when we go to this here, this is something that I worked out because I was very curious about what this 430 years was all about. It actually took me years to solve this riddle. This is the riddle right here. How do we get 430 years from this seemingly, if Jochebed was born when we went into Egypt and she had Moses at 130 and Moses brought us out at 80 years old, that means we were only in Egypt for 210 years. And it took me a long time to figure out what this riddle was about. But the very first time that Jehovah spoke to Abraham was right here in Yasher. Abraham receives the prophecy. This is Yasher 13:17. And it was in the 15th year of Abraham's dwelling in the land of Canaan. Oh, there's so much for us to see. Which is the 70th year of the life of Abram. Here's 70 years. He's 70 years old right now. He's going to be in Haran for 5 years. So we get to add 5 years. He's going to leave when he's 75. That's where it picks up in Torah. Then he's going to be in Canaan for another 25 years before he has Isaac. There's the 30 years. That's the 30-year difference. They're starting it at 0 when Abraham receives the prophecy and starting it when Isaac is born. And that's why they were off by 30 years. Trying to do what was right. You know what? Laying down their life in service to Jehovah. That's what these men of Ephraim were doing. Well, you can read about this. I've got places here. Let me do this. When you added up all these together, because at 25 years, when Abraham is 100 years old, he has Isaac. Isaac's going to have Jacob when he's 60 years old. Jacob's going to come into Egypt when he's 130, and we're going to be in Egypt for 210 years. When you add all that up, we get 430 years. I know I've written about it on my blog, but I don't remember where I've written about it. Let me see if I can get that to you for next week, okay? I'll make a PDF file out of it for you. That's all I can do. Okay, let's go back to Yasher. Let's find out about what happens to these 30,000 men that are leaving Egypt. At that time, in the 180th year of Israelites going down to Egypt, there went forth from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot, of Israel's seed, who were all of Joseph's tribe, of Ephraim ben Joseph's seed. And they said the period was complete, which Jehovah had appointed to Israel's seed in times of old, which he had spoken to Abraham. You know what? There's lots of people right now that are coming up saying things like this. The time appointed has come. But you know what? When Jehovah moves in the earth, we're going to see things happen like they happened with Moses. Pillars of fire and smoke, seeing the great arm of Jehovah working for us. Those are the things that we're going to start watching for. There's lots of men who are trying to do it on their own strength, but you can't do it in your own strength. What I would encourage you to do is to become fully Jehovah's men. Then let him do it. Raya follows me as I follow Jehovah. That's what we got to do. It's not about her timing. It's about Jehovah's timing. It's about my timing. But I have to be led by Jehovah to do it. And these men girded themselves, and they put each man his sword at his side, and each man his armor upon him. And they trusted in their strength. And they went out together from Egypt with a mighty hand. And they brought no provision for the road, only silver and gold. What do you say? I bring you out with great possessions. Not even bread for that day did they bring in their hands, for they thought of getting their provisions for pay from the Philistines. And if not, they would take it by force. And these men were mighty and valiant men. One could pursue 1,000, and two could rout 10,000. So they trusted to their strength and went together as they were. And they directed their course toward the land of Gath. You're going north. And they went down and found the shepherds of Gath feeding the cattle of Gath's seed. And they said to the shepherds, "Give us some sheep for pay, that we may eat, for we are hungry. For we have eaten no bread this day." Wow. You know what? Shepherds compared to 30,000 men. Okay. Yeah. But they didn't do that. And the shepherds said, "Are they our sheep or cattle that we should give them to you for pay?" So Ephraim's seed approached to take them by force. And the shepherds of Gath shouted over them that their cry was heard at a distance. And all Gath's seed went out to them. They just simply cried out, "Help us! They're trying to take your sheep!" And when Gath's seed saw the evil doings of Ephraim's seed, they returned and assembled Gath's men. And they put on each man his armor, and they came forth to Ephraim's seed for battle. And they engaged with them in the valley of Gath. And the battle was severe. And they smote from each other a great many on that day. And the second day Gast's seed sent to all the cities of the Philistines, that they should come to their help, saying, Come up unto us and help us, that we may smite Ephraim's seed, who have come forth from Egypt, to take our cattle and to fight against us without cause. You know, I was just thinking, in another 30 years, no, another 70 years, Israel's seed is going to come against these men once again, all Israel's seed. I wonder how many of these, what did they just call themselves? Philistines, there it is right there. Gast's seed sent to all the cities of the Philistines, that they should come to their help, saying. I wonder if they're going to remember, we whopped Ephraim's seed here. Now the souls of Ephraim's seed were exhausted with hunger and thirst, for they had eaten no bread for 3 days. And 40,000 men went forth from the cities of the Philistines to assist the men of Gath's men. And these men were engaged in the battle with Ephraim's seed. And Jehovah delivered Ephraim's seed into the hand of the Philistines. And they smote Ephraim's seed, all who had gone forth from Egypt. None were remaining but 10 men who had run away from the engagement. For this evil was from Jehovah against Ephraim's seed, for they transgressed the word of Jehovah. Didn't it seem like they were trying to keep the word of Jehovah in going forth from Egypt? Before the period had arrived which Jehovah in those days of old had appointed to Israel. No, we were supposed to come out at the correct time. It sounds like there was confusion between the 400 and the 430 years. And the Philistines also, there fell a great many, about 20,000 men. And their brethren carried them and buried them in the cities. Ephraim lost 30,000 men. And the slain of Ephraim's seed remained forsaken in the valley of Gath for many days and years, and were not brought to burial, and the valley was filled with men's bones. You know, when you read something like this, you think, is this something, did this really happen? Could this really have happened? I mean, isn't that what you think? But you know what? It makes me look deeper into Torah. And I'm going to show you what I found. No, this is not the one, but the next note is going to be. Let me just read this to you. Could this be the story of which the valley of dry bones has its origins? And the hand of Jehovah came upon me and brought me out in the spirit of Jehovah, and set me down in the midst of the valley. And it was full of bones. Then he caused me to pass by them all around, and behold, they were very many in the open valley, and indeed they were very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? So I answered, O Jehovah, O my master, Jehovah, you know. Again he said to me, Prophesy to these bones, and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Jehovah. They didn't hear the word of Jehovah. They were trying to do it, but they didn't hear it. Thus says my master Jehovah to these bones, Surely I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. I will put sinew on you, and bring flesh upon you, cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live. Then you shall know that I am Jehovah. You shall know that I am Jehovah when the time is right. Well, look at this. This is what I found. And the men who had escaped from the battle came to Egypt and told Israel's seed all that had befallen them. And their father Ephraim mourned over them for many days. And his brethren came to console him. Look at this. This is Ephraim. He's still alive. Now, he's not one of the sons. He's a son of a son, isn't he? But he's still alive. Look what happens, or look what I found here. This is pretty neat. I put, wow, Ephraim's still alive. And Joseph's wife, this is when he was born, Asnath, the daughter of Potiphar, bore him 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Joseph was 34 years old when he begat them. If Joseph was 34 years old, then now we know the age of Ephraim right now. Manasseh and Ephraim were 5 years old before they were born 5 years before we came to Egypt. Ephraim is 185 when the 30,000 are killed. He's 185 years old right now, this man. They are multiplying. 30,000 men, not counting women and children, since they arrived in Egypt 180 years ago. Isn't that amazing? That's huge. The amount of men that we have multiplied while we were in Egypt. From 70 to 600,000 for all the tribes by the time the next 30 years is up. I would have thought that because of these deaths in Ephraim, that there would be a significantly less amount of Ephraimites coming out of Egypt in 210 years. But you know what? That's not the case. I was very surprised to see that. When you go to Numbers 1 and 2, you can look at it. They came out about 30,000 strong. Most of the other tribes still came out 30,000 strong. How did those men get replaced in such a short time? I don't know. Well, look what it says here in Exodus. Oh, no, this isn't what I'm looking for. I want to see, what did I do with that? Oh, here it is here. Well, I guess I got to go just read a little bit further. And he came unto his woman, and she bore a son. This is a 185-year-old man bearing a son, called his name Beriah. Beriah. And for he was unfortunate in his house. They put she for some reason. I think it's supposed to be he. I'll show you why right here. Here is Chronicles. Look what it says in Chronicles. Isn't this interesting? No, here it is. The men of Gath, who were born in the land, killed them because they came down to take away their cattle. Then Ephraim, their father, mourned many days, and his brethren came to comfort him. This is what we were just talking about. And when he went to his woman, she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Beriah, because tragedy had come upon his house. Isn't that interesting that we're talking about the same group of men? Yeah, you know, you just don't even see it. You don't know when this happened when you read this in Chronicles. But now we know when this happened. 30 years before we came out of Egypt. And we know the background for it as well. Isn't that interesting? Well, I'm going to stop here. It's 1:40. And this is kind of the area that we like to stop in between, 1:30 and 2. So this takes us an hour and 40 minutes. And we'll pick up here next week. Oh, we have lots to look forward to. Moses is going to be taken away. The kingship is going to be taken away from Moses because of this Jezebel Cushite woman who was the woman of Cush, a woman of Kikianus. Her son is old enough to reign, and she wants him to reign. They're going to toss Moses out on his ear. No, they're going to put him out, send him away with honors. But now he's going to go to Midian. And he finally, what was this? 9 plus 40, 49 years later, after he left Egypt, he's finally going to come to the well and help the girls water their sheep. Isn't that interesting? Well, we have lots to see because he's going to be put in jail also next week for 10 years. So much to see, so much to learn. All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining me. We'll see you all next week. Love you tons. Bye now.